Hi, it's Richard and Craig here with the week 3 feedback video. And one of my favourite things, Craig, about the community of learners is when they really come together and support one another. And a lot of our learners this week have been saying that they're really getting a sense that they're not alone, dealing with a lot of these challenges like managing digital technology, noticing that they can't really multitask even when they're trying to do it.
Yeah.
And seeing that other people are experiencing the same thing is actually one of the best things that can come out of this course.
And the collective wisdom of 10,000 people engaged in the same thing at the same time can be enormous.
Yes,
and,
definitely.
A big topic this week, the big 4 cognitive practices, or what I call the big 4, and some interesting insights into that. People, and really wanting to reflect over the content again and again, and not just by the end of this course, but in a week from now, in a month from now, in a year from now, and 10 years from now, that hopefully our understanding of what acceptance and letting go or non-attachment's about, etc., what does it really mean to be present, hopefully it's going to be deeper in 10 years than it is now. So
something like acceptance. People often talk about, I've just got to accept it. And it's kind of happening in their head, isn't it? I've just got to accept what's happening for me right now or accept this situation. But then there's accepting it.
Yeah.
As that ongoing practice of perhaps getting caught in not accepting it and resisting it and coming back to just allowing things to be as they are.
Yeah, and to think, accept, and we notice resistance to acceptance or resistance to letting go. From a mindfulness perspective, it's not, I'm getting it wrong, I can't do it. It's just like to get curious about it.
Yeah.
To notice the resistance, to notice the effect of the non-acceptance, to notice what it feels like to be holding on, what it feels like to be out of the present moment. So to get curious about that, just in a way that where we start to sort of deepen our understanding rather than criticizing the fact that there's non-acceptance. The acceptance will come in its own time, but it comes out of a clarity of seeing the difference between those various states.
Yeah.
Yeah, and letting go and letting be is a bit of a theme for a lot of learners. Letting go, I suppose, just refers to the non-attachment. There's a thought there, but we're not caught up in it. There's an emotion or a feeling there, but we're not caught up with it. Letting be, I suppose, that takes on more of a sense of just allowing something to be the way it is, like not having to respond or react to something, just being able to move on or just leave something alone. Which is related, but perhaps a slightly different meaning.
And also just even with our thoughts, if we let go of a thought, perhaps we find that we're ruminating on something, we're kind of really feeding a line of thought, and to let it go, it just means to stop focusing on that and perhaps bring our attention back into the present moment, reconnect with the senses. And maybe that thought just goes, but perhaps it keeps going round and round in the mind. I mean, maybe we're lying in bed and there's that thought going round and round in our mind, or the mind's just distracted. And so just to let that be without getting caught up in trying to resist that and fight that, I think that's another way to think about it.
Yeah, and very often we don't let go, we don't accept until things reach a bit of crescendo. It's like we have to make that decision, we have to let something go, or we just become aware of just the significant distress of not accepting something, what that's causing. So very often the distress drives us to eventually let go or to resolve something. But we seem to tolerate a lot of ambiguity for quite a long time along the way.
A lot of people come to the practice of mindfulness through some kind of distress or illness or suffering, or just an acute awareness of being overwhelmed by stress. It seems to be a common sort of entry point for a lot of people.
Questions about being mindful in the dentist chair.
Yes, well, that's a black belt mindfulness challenge, isn't it? Yeah.
I can remember when I was up until about the age of 15, when I went to the dentist, so I would always avoid having the needle. I'd have a filling if I had to have a filling, but I'd have it without the needle because I was so scared of those long needles. I mean, those dentist needles, especially in those days, looked like the ugliest things you've ever seen. And one day, for some reason, I thought to myself, next time I go to the dentist, and if I do need a filling, I'll have the needle. But I decided for some reason to pay full attention to what it actually felt like, to turn my attention to it, because there was a question in the back of my mind, is the actual, pain associated with the needle as bad as I kind of assume it's going to be? So I actually went to the dentist and I gave my full attention to what it actually felt like, because I wanted to see. When I gave my attention to it, there wasn't actually that much going on at all. But what my mind made of it was extraordinary.
Yep.
the amplifying or exaggerating effect that the mind can have, a bit of anxiety can have on our experience of something can be enormous. And so in the dentist, yes, either just turn the attention to the experience, to just feel it as no more, no less than what it is, but in a sense, with less of the reactivity and projections and assumptions we add to something. That's where a lot of the suffering is. But also, for a short-term discomfort, there's nothing wrong with a bit of distraction.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with some calming music, and that can also be very helpful as well.
Even just focusing on the breath, in a way that's an avoidance of attending to the actual sensations of the needle, but that's perhaps just better than feeding it with that anticipatory anxiety, which I think is what you're saying is really causing the problem.
Because that's where most of the suffering is that we amplify things out of all perspective and proportion. So however we go about doing it, if we're experiencing it free of that, and it's not about trying to block it out or pretend it's not there, but if we're free of that exaggerating effect, then all the better.
Yeah. With the formal meditations, some of our learners have said that their perception of time gets distorted. They might sit for 5 or 10 minutes and then the meditation finishes and they're like, hang on a second, that seems like 30 seconds. Or sometimes maybe it drags on and seems like 2 hours. I think a very interesting thing happens to time when we're in the moment. Somehow I think that's a very normal sort of experience and one that I hear a lot. And I experience myself that sometimes I'll sit and just practice being in the moment, and 5 or 10 minutes can go very quickly or sometimes take quite a long time.
Yeah. The studies show that when somebody's doing something like doing the dishes, but doing them mindfully, the time seems to flow more effortlessly rather than it seems to be longer than it is when we're resisting and wishing I was somewhere else, for example. When truly in the present moment, a split second can take a long time. Things kind of slow down, which is like hyper mindfulness. So, time's very variable, our perception of it.
Any tips for falling asleep? Well, that's a common experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
Working with sleepiness is a very important thing to do, because we don't want to actually sit down and quote unquote meditate, but actually kind of meditate and practice sleepfulness. What we want to do is to practice being alert and aware at the same time. So I think things like sitting up straighter, half opening the eyes, even standing up and practicing mindfulness, or doing some mindful movements and mindful walking, all of these things can be really helpful when we're tired.
Or just have a power nap.
Just have a nap. That's right.
Before meditating, for example. And for a lot of people who could have a really full, busy life and sit down to meditate, and we become aware of the tiredness.
Yes.
Aware of the need
which we
for
often
rest.
don't notice, right? Because we're so busily caught up in the activities of the day and all of that anxious kind of thinking that revs us up with that nervous energy. And the moment we start to calm down and pay attention, we can often notice just how tired we are.
Yeah.
And you've got that 45-degree rule as well, don't you?
That's right. Yeah. Once your head's gotten to about 45 degrees, you've stopped practicing mindfulness. It's now officially a power nap.
Yeah.
Which is good too, but it's not mindfulness. Yeah.
Things like small movements to stay alert.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So that's some people can use that and it can be helpful. Ultimately, if practicing, allowing the body to be still, which is different to trying to be still, because very often when we're trying to be still, we're actually using tensions to work against those twitches and everything else. So even if the body's a little bit, well, the movement helps to maintain engagement, fair enough, but if the body falls still or feels a bit agitated, and just allow those sort of wriggles, as it were, to just work their way out, just letting them to sort of settle.
I know that sometimes if I'm sitting meditating and I want to move, I'll ask myself the question, am I moving just out of some reactive habit, or is it actually out of compassion for my body because this is bad for me sitting like this?
Yeah.
And I'll ask that question, then I'll move very mindfully and then notice what it feels like to be in the new position. And I think that's probably a good way of working with it.
That's right. You sit down to meditate and all of a sudden you've got a little itch on the end of your nose. It came from nowhere, but it seems to come out during meditation. Do I scratch or don't I scratch? Well, black belt mindfulness is to sit with the itch and just observe the waves of irritation and everything else. Or you can decide to scratch, but scratch mindfully. Just feel the waves of relief.
Yeah. Meditating without the audio, well, of course, ultimately what we'd like to do is become independent of needing any kind of recorded MP3 to meditate. So if any of the learners are at the stage where they can just set a timer for 5 and 10 minutes and just be present with the body or the breath, go for it, absolutely. And if you're still getting very distracted or losing track or reacting to things, perhaps just to have those training wheels of the the guided audios are probably a good thing to do, particularly 3 weeks into a course.
Yeah, but that's just part of the journey. And don't assume that it's bad because you are noticing the distraction, but just working with it.
Yeah.
Unitasking, multitasking has come up quite a lot. Expectations in workplaces and the whole language around this, assuming multitasking is both possible and useful.
Yeah.
To actually shift the language to perhaps efficient attention switching.
Yeah.
Because
just to realise that we can only focus on one thing at a time. So we're by definition attention switching, and are we doing that efficiently or not efficiently? I think that's probably the question, isn't it?
Yeah. And so how we prioritise our ability to do that in challenging sort of circumstances is rather important. Like things coming up like busy at home or landing a plane or something like that.
Or a teacher in a classroom or something like that.
Yeah. I can remember as a junior doctor observing really skillful and experienced senior registrars and consultants working with emergency situations, and it can look like multitasking, but they weren't. The attention was so precise. When they asked for a piece of information, their attention was right there. When they looked at the monitor, the attention was right there. When they asked for an IV line, it was right there. When that IV line was going into a very small blood vessel, the attention was right there. So it looks like multitasking, but it's not. The attention was like a laser beam. But at the same time as having the precise focus, there's a kind of contextual awareness. Details are happening.
Knowing where to prioritise the attention, where to focus it.
That's right. Yeah. It's not just a scattered kind of attention going all over the place. It's prioritising the attention very efficiently and not being distracted. And when we're in the flow or the zone, we're not distracted by unnecessary things, but we are able to keep a contextual awareness at the same time, of perspective, I suppose you'd say.
Yeah. And then productivity, procrastination.
Yes.
Don't know much about that, do you?
Never happened before. Never happened before. But yeah, maybe it happens a bit in modern life. And any interesting points to raise about that?
Well, definitely. I mean, one of the things that we get our students here at Monash to do in our courses is to pay attention to the act of procrastination, to start to really notice, okay, when I'm procrastinating, if it's a habit, how am I doing it?
Yeah.
To bring that non-judgmental lens rather than just thinking, I'm just a procrastinator, I'm just lazy. To look a little bit deeper in how are we procrastinating, and to really start to notice, okay, I'm putting it off, or I'm making excuses, or I'm not prioritising that, and to start bringing some awareness to that automatically starts to shift it.
Yes.
And then things like creativity, it's one thing to, creativity, of course, involves a little bit of mind wandering, and those default circuits need to be active, but so does the prefrontal cortex. We need to have an awareness of, as you said before, that contextual awareness, perhaps.
Yeah.
The attention's wandering, we're thinking about different things and linking different things together in the mind, but there's also an awareness of what we're doing, so the mind isn't just wandering off all over the place.
Yeah. I tend to think of the creative process not so much as mind wandering, but mind engaging in a creative process where you're looking at the ideas that are presenting, but you're sifting the relevant from less useful ones. For example, you're able to observe something and then to unpack it and follow a line of thought. But that's different to the mind wandering where you need to do something creative, but you're thinking about lunch instead.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So
that's about it for us.
Yeah.
For this week. We'll see you again next week. Which will be our final week, won't it? Yeah,
that's right.
We should mention we do have another course starting on June 25th, which is maintaining a mindful life. So it's sort of the part 2 of this course. So we'd strongly encourage you, if you've enjoyed this one, to think about signing up for that.
Excellent. Yeah.
But until then, happy practicing, and we look forward to reading more of your comments.